What if all you needed to start a digital communication career was a room and a laptop? Today, we're talking to Sena, a creative voiceover artist who has leveraged her talents into a career as a VTuber. She creates online community with a virtual persona. What's her secret to building an engaged audience? From conflict in online communities to getting started on any budget, you'll discover what it takes to start VTubing. My name is Ryan McPherson, and this is the Storytelling Movement Podcast. Sam, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
All right, absolutely. My name is Sena. I use any pronouns, and I have been a voiceover artist since 2020, since the quarantine started, all the way back when I was in my mom's bedroom, and I only had a laptop. I've been an actor since, say, middle school. I don't do much acting now other than scare acting at House of Torment here in Austin, Texas. I am not based in San Antonio, although I wish I was sometimes. I am also a VTuber. I have my own fully rigged VTuber model, and I am currently in the process of making my debut for a full body model. I have a lot of experience in streaming. I started streaming back when I first started voice acting as well. So I've just basically become a bit multifaceted when it comes to the entertainment industry, especially when it comes to online presence.
And VTubing, why did you get interested in VTubing? What was it about VTubing that attracted you initially?
I didn't start getting into it until about 2 years ago, just when I graduated high school. I wasn't that interested in it either when it first came out. I think it was 2016 when Kazuna Ai came out with her 3D model. But I always found the idea of having an avatar that is tracked to your face when it comes to streaming. You know, I'm not that much of a fan when it comes to my face. I don't even have that great of a camera setup. I'm just working with like a webcam that I got from my parents. So when it comes to VTubing, I'm able to put on a persona of a character that really embodies myself, but also my brand. I'm also working on a budget, having a background, and excuse the messing room in the background because I'm just recording out of my bedroom and my iPhone. But I really liked the idea of just having a character that you can play. And it is such a niche medium when it comes to content creation. And that's what I thoroughly enjoy about it. It has made the streaming sphere so much more accessible because you can have somebody who is very insecure when it comes to their face, but they have a good stage presence. And that is what I love. I'm not necessarily insecure with my face, but sometimes I'd much rather not be on camera, and I'd much rather be the blue fox that I like having moving around, tracking my face. I really like that. And just playing this character that is also kind of myself, but also carries myself in very different ways.
The voice acting and voiceover work that you do, how does that relate to what you do as a VTuber? Because I know that these worlds are related, but I'm not sure how they're related.
Surprisingly, you would find a lot of voice actors, a lot of professional voice actors as VTubers. We've got Alejandro Saab, we've got, I think her name is Amelie. They're both very, very popular VTubers. I think when it comes to voice acting and VTubing, it definitely does correlate in having that presence where you can control your voice and you know how to control your voice. And you kind of get that pre-existing experience that you can carry on from imitating a character and moving it over to a live stream. And I really enjoy that.
I wonder, are there any tips and tricks that you have for people who want to get into the voiceover work? And of course, that's related to VTubing. So tips and tricks for voiceover work, does that look different from VTubing, or are they really interrelated?
I would say they are interrelated in some ways. However, if you do want to get into VTubing and voice acting, I would highly suggest kind of keeping it separate, because when it comes to professionally voice acting, you kind of want to build your brand on having your own personal face, because that is what is going to be going on your IMDb or any other places where people can find you. When it comes to starting off with voice acting, when I first got into this whole sphere, obviously was not starting off on like huge productions right off the bat. I was just editing silly little videos with my friends and just making funny character quips and abridged voiceovers with this Blue Yeti that I had saved up for while living with my mom. And there is a lot of ways that you can get started in the voice acting sphere. Personally, a good free outlet to get yourself started is Casting Call Club. It is a completely free website. Personally, don't go on there as much when it comes to auditioning anymore. However, it is a good place to find solid small projects. However, if you do want to invest a little bit more money trying to find projects that you want to try out for, I know that backstage.com also is a good place to start. A good way to start out when you're trying to get employers to come to you to search for your voiceover work, a good way to start is by having a demo reel, just displaying your range of talents that you can go for when it comes to your voice. And my voice isn't that range right now because as I've been doing a scare acting, my voice has kind of been shot lately. And I also end up talking a lot on stream, and I usually wear my voice out. But when it comes to VTubing, yes, it does highly correlate together, and I do appreciate that. But with VTubing, there's a bit more extra steps, and I always say this for somebody who wants to get into virtual streaming with a mascot, do not invest insane amounts of money at first, especially if you don't know whether or not you're going to like what you do as a streamer. I have seen so many people invest thousands upon thousands of dollars on a fully cut model, fully rigged, a crazy debut, and you got so many people in their audience, and next thing you know, they quit a couple of months later because of burnout. It is sad to see that, and I usually, whenever it comes to people who are new to VTubing, I always encourage either they get a free-to-use model, there are plenty of them, you can always find them on Etsy or other places, or they could just draw it themselves. Like what I did, I started off by drawing on my own model. And there's also things such as PNG tubers, which react to your voice, which are so much cheaper than regular VTubers. It is a great way to just get your feet wet and see if you actually enjoy the medium before you start investing any crazy amounts of money.
Where can I find PNG, do you say?
Yes.
Okay, PNG. How can I find that? And you also mentioned you created your own. Tell us about those two options. Tell us more.
So I created my own PNG at first. I don't know how to create my own VTuber model. I highly commend any artist that is able to create their own model because it is so incredibly meticulous, and also animating it. Us in the VTuber community, we call it rigging. We do that on a software called Live 2D. But when it comes to PNG, we call it PNG tubing, which is basically similar to VTubing. It's basically the same thing, except you have a still moving image that reacts to your voice. We have recently had a website startup when it comes to commissioning artists to create your character, and it is specifically catered towards the VTubing genre called VGen. And it is basically, think of Fiverr, but mainly focused on artists for that matter, instead of basically any facet. When it comes to VGen, that is my go-to place when it comes to searching for any types of assets. I have been a self-taught artist since about elementary school. I basically kind of had to teach myself, and I'm very glad that I had that talent, that experience to create my own model. It definitely does save you a lot of money. VTuber models, I'm not sure if you know, but they can range. The lowest I have seen was about $400 to $300, and they can go as high as, I think I've seen $7,000, $8,000. It really just depends on the quality of the work, the amount of time that the person puts into making that work. My first VTuber model, I had gotten it when I had first come out of high school, and I was ready to move on from my PNG. I had spent, I think, about $300 on just the art, and to get it animated, I spent $400, so that is $700 in total for that model. The model I use now, I got the model art for $400 and the animation for $200. So that is $600 in total. And I think the one that I am currently in the progress of commissioning is on its way to being like $2,000 to $3,000, as I have found that I wanted to make streaming a full-time career for me.
And that kind of commitment to a full-time career was easier because of the voice acting that you had done before, or was it still a pretty big leap to go full-time VTuber?
Well, for anyone, I think it's a pretty big leap to go full-time as a streamer. It is definitely a very competitive industry. Ever since I was young, I've always been an entertainer. My parents, my family has always regarded me on having that kind of stage presence, and they wanted me to, I mean, obviously, parents will be parents. They don't want their kids to end up like artists or starving artists. And my mom's like, I want you to be an FBI agent because you know how to talk to people. And I was like, no, I'd rather just have my own true crime podcast. I'd rather be a true crime journalist and actually be out on the field because I don't want a target on my back. When it comes to voice acting, it definitely did make things a lot easier for me when it comes to having that experience of interacting with my audience. It definitely does help me create a better character persona to keep the audience engaged. Because if you're arriving to a stream and you're talking like, oh yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this today, and maybe we'll go ahead and do that, and this and that, and this and that, and you're just monotone, you don't really have that much inflection in your voice and emotion or stage presence, that can definitely lose your audience. I always encourage my peers around me who are also trying to get into this, never stop talking when it comes to a stream or a podcast in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, it's okay to stumble. It's okay to stutter. It's okay to lose track of your words a little bit. My mind runs faster than my mouth sometimes, and I end up stumbling on my words all the time. But when it comes to voice acting, I definitely think that it could very much help you out when it comes to VTubing, but you don't necessarily need it. They can go hand in hand, but you can be a VTuber without being a voice actor, and you can be a voice actor without being a VTuber, essentially.
The kinds of things that someone starting out would need to know. You have a checklist of things that they need to know in order to get into both voice acting and VTubering?
So when it comes to voice acting, first things that you need to know is that you're not going to get accepted into a project right off the bat. I'm letting you know that right now. It's not going to be that easy. But my mom always told me, Mark Ruffalo, in Marvel, he had auditioned over 200 times before he got any part and before he even got the part as Hulk. So my mom always just told me to just keep on trying and eventually you'll make it. And that's basically what I can say for almost any career, especially if you really want to take off and you're not really seeing the fruits of your labor. Just keep on trying. That is the biggest thing, especially if you are really wanting results. What you need to know when it comes to voice acting, oh goodness, don't feel like you need all sorts of fancy equipment right off the bat either. Like, when we were talking in your class, you told us like the cheapest thing you can go for is your phone microphone, because there is all sorts of post-production software that you can use to edit your voice to make it sound cleaner. Do not need to absolutely empty out your pockets in order to do that. You might not even like it. If you do like it, I highly recommend staying within budget and just kind of upgrading from there. Me personally, I just saved up my money and I started off with a Blue Yeti, which was a USB microphone. And then I moved on to my longest running microphone, which was my Audio Technica AT2020 with a Focusrite interface. That was my first ever dynamic microphone that is connected to, what cable was it? The XLR cable. And now, until recently, Christmas of last year, I got this Shure, and that has been my go-to podcasting mic. I wouldn't exactly recommend it when it comes to voiceover work, as it is specifically made more for streaming and podcasting, but it definitely does get the job done especially when it comes to smaller projects. Everybody that I know that is either a VTuber or a voice actor in the streaming sphere probably has this microphone or something of the like, especially if they have money to afford it. When it comes to VTubing, the only thing I can forewarn for people first getting into it is that the biggest community that you will find online for VTubing is on Twitter or X. And I have a love-hate relationship with X, honestly, because the entire VTuber community is built on having a community, interacting with your audience, and creating those status updates. And as we discussed in your class, when I think this was in our last subject, we said that the audience for Twitter is specifically for very opinionated people. And I definitely felt myself getting a good chuckle because I like to call it a cesspool when it comes to just the amount of lack of media literacy, I would say, on that platform. And the only advice about having such an accessible medium of streaming and content creation is that there are just some people that are not fit to be influencers, and they can be very problematic, to say the least. When it comes to having such an accessible medium, that also includes very divisive communities and people who will oppose your opinion online. And so the thing with fandoms is that everyone is like-minded, especially when it comes to your own fandom. However, when it comes to VTubing, there are so many different perspectives and there's so many different ideologies and so many different values that people have that it is pretty easy to get yourself a bit lost in the sauce when it comes to expressing yourself online. So the only advice I would say is just keep your head out of the drama and only mind your own growth and keep the people around you that are only there to see you grow. A lot of things that I have seen people complain about is that it is definitely very hard to create and maintain friendships, interpersonal relationships in the VTuber sphere. A lot of people assume it is a purely transactional relationship. And yes, I can say that it can be a transactional relationship at times because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people that do wish to make this medium their career, such as myself. So of course, you've got to build those connections. The one thing that I would say for people to do is just be respectful about it. You know, don't make people feel like you're just walking all over them just to get a better position when it comes to your audience. Your audience isn't just through making connections. It is something that you curate and gather yourself. And it is just kind of the friends that you make along the way, the people that you stick around and you really bond with. Those are your true friends. At the end of the day, we're all mainly just coworkers, including the people who just use this medium as a hobby.
It's important to make sure that you have a perseverance because it's not the kind of thing where you might see overnight success. It takes a lot of work and a lot of patience and being aware of the landscape. Just to kind of recap, we have to understand that there are divisive communities, just like in any kind of industry or line of work.
Absolutely.
So can you give us a sample of maybe some of the kinds of voiceover work you've done that you found most fun? And then also a sample of your VTuber voices.
So when it comes to voiceover work, as of recently, my schedule has become quite booked. So I haven't really picked up on any projects as of lately. And when it comes to the projects that I have done, they were a lot more indie YouTube, mainly YouTube videos. I remember I had done a project, an abridged project on the show by the name of Ruby, which was a show made by a company here in Austin by the name of Rooster Teeth. Rooster Teeth is unfortunately now been sold by Warner Brothers, and I will miss it very much, but I'm very glad the show Ruby is still active and alive. But at the time, there was massive surge when it comes to abridged voice acting. And I had a group of friends who were all into Ruby, and we had opened up a casting call for an abridged series, and I managed to get the voice of Ruby. And Ruby, she kind of has this nasally voice, and she has a very upbeat personality, and she's always talking like this. And I remember throughout the show is that like her voice would get a little bit higher sometimes, but up until recently, it's gotten a lot lower as she has kind of grown as a character, and and kind of felt myself growing with her as a character as well. I just remembered I had done this, I would say like a storytelling podcast for a while. And I played this very like rough character, kind of mysterious type. And it was like a zombie apocalypse podcast. And I really like doing that too. One thing I really like about flexing my voiceover experience is whenever I play Dungeons and Dragons, I love that game. And I love giving fun voices for my characters, especially considering I don't have much time to work on projects, especially considering I've been focusing mainly on VTuber work. And I've also been working on making my own podcast as well. So being able to practice through that, I have this like noble woman. She's a snake lady. So she's her name is Ashka, and she's like, I like to carry myself like this, and I'm better than everyone. Definitely, I would consider myself more intermediate. I definitely am very self-taught. I taught myself voiceover work through just mimicking voices that I hear just in general media. It's probably due to my neurodivergency. I am ADHD, and one of our symptoms is mimicking or parroting other voices. And I always have to kind of hold back, especially when somebody has a very strong accent, to just not flip the switch and practically sound like I am mimicking them, essentially. When it comes to VTubing, I like to say I am very proud of the fact that I have been able to host a lot of community events. I really enjoy the sense of camaraderie that I have not only with fellow VTubers, but also my audience. Currently, I am in the midst of organizing a donathon, which is basically like a donation marathon, essentially. I am currently raising $10,000 to donate to North Carolina that has been being affected by Hurricane Helen, and currently having to arrange all sorts of incentives and goals and endurance streams. It's definitely a bit harder when I also have a day job and a class, but I'm managing to get through it. I've done it before in the past. Once, for my birthday, I had a 12-hour endurance donathon, and that was very fun. And I had a lot of your retention during those times, because I think when it comes to the VTuber sphere, your audience heavily relies on interaction with their host or with the person that they are watching. That is something that gets a lot of traction. And one thing that definitely gets a lot of people coming over to your channel is just interacting with the people in your community. That I would say probably having like a tier list stream, or having people share their characters with you so you can talk about how cool their design looks on stream. That is something that I have found people coming to my streams a lot more for, because people really in the VTuber sphere really like to have this sort of interpersonal connection with the person that they are watching. VTubers are heavily influenced, they started out in Eastern Asia, in Japan. That is very heavily influenced on idol culture. And idol culture, it is strongly encouraged to have a kind of a relationship with your fans, not necessarily having a parasocial relationship. In fact, I'm strongly against that, but kind of interacting with your fans a lot. That is heavily encouraged in that space.
So in voice acting, it sounds like at least the kinds of places where you were working at and the kinds of jobs that you were doing, it was a more isolated experience?
I would consider that, yes.
Okay.
However, there are plenty of studios out there. I do have a friend that is currently working for a big-time YouTuber. I cannot say the names due to NDA contracts, but their office is currently based in Lakeway, and they record on a daily basis over there. So one thing I really like about voice acting is how versatile and how accessible it has become to record your own work.
Both art forms sound like so much fun. When you were talking about the community aspect of the VTuber community, I know that that's going to be very attractive to a lot of people. And I know a lot of people like the isolation of the sound booth and being able to really get into character. So these seem like two very different paths, depending on what an individual might want to nourish in their creative souls. With the community work that you're doing, can you speak a little bit about how you're getting engagement in those communities? What are some of the things that you've done to help boost engagement?
So When it comes to searching for engagement, especially online, as the VTuber community is very big on Twitter, I do search for a lot of my engagements starting on Twitter. I've heard some people say, like, your Twitter following doesn't necessarily translate to the people who go and watch your channel, which, yes, in some ways it can do that. However, there is a certain amount of thoughtfulness that you have to put into creating your posts and creating an engagement tweet that will get people to not only interact with the post, but also interact with your stream. As I said before, I would have tier list streams where I would openly talk about people's designs. Up until recently, I have started my own game show that is mildly inspired by Austin Show's Lover Host, but in the VTuber community, it's called VCupid. And I've been doing it with a bunch of my friends. And so every week, I would pick out a main contestant and 6 participants for people to win their love over. Of course, there's really no love involved. They end up just doing a collaboration stream afterwards, and we just call that a date. And it's really fun because it gets people to talk about themselves. You get to learn about all of these new streamers, and it also helps create a new platform for people who are also starting out in the scene. And that's what I really enjoy doing, especially in the community. I have my own Discord server that is entirely curated to growing your platform as a streamer. And I will be honest, I've kind of been like taking snippets from our personal branding class and kind of applying it to the advice that I give to my peers, as in just trying to create a personal brand for yourself that is unique to you and everyone else around you. That is very imperative when it comes to VTubing. There is a lot that goes into having a VTuber, especially considering how accessible this medium is. You kind of need to have something that stands out in the crowd, so you're not just a regular run-of-the-mill streamer. You need to have something that really draws people to your channel and what kind of content that you create. One thing I want to kind of bring to this community in general is to show people to not be afraid to get into it. It definitely seems daunting, especially considering there are people out there with insane amounts of numbers, and they're like, where do I even, and the people who come to me, they're like, where do I even start, Sam? And sometimes I have to ask myself that question too, because I'm not that big. I mean, I would say that I have 4,000 followers, which to some people would be like, yeah, that's a lot. You have a huge platform. But then to other people, I'm like, I have mutuals that are well into like the hundreds of thousands of followers. But these are people who have been doing this for a long time. I've only been doing this for 2 years. It can take years to fully grow your platform because it takes a lot of learning when it comes to the algorithms of what works, what doesn't work. And there's a lot that goes into that.
Tell us about that, because imagine there is a steep learning curve in the VTuber community for what works and what doesn't work. And that might look different from other communities on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When it comes to communities on YouTube, I feel like it is definitely more focused on just a lot of quality work. And so when it comes to learning what works and what doesn't work, when it comes to growing your audience in the VTuber community, starting off with Twitter, I personally would say post at least once a day. At least, and always focus on making it like kind of middle of the day. I would say maybe noon to around 8. Noon, 6. Those are the prime times to be releasing content that you want people to interact with you. And one piece of advice that I have gotten from people who were bigger than me is to kind of separate your Twitter posts. Whenever you have a sentence or like a status post, you make a sentence, you end it with an emoji, because that surprisingly tricks the algorithm to bringing people in. And then you write another sentence, like add a space between that, and never add more than 3 hashtags on Twitter, which is kind of strange because I've seen posts blow up with crazy amounts of tags or no tags at all. It really depends on what the algorithm chooses to put out there. And then there's also Twitter Blue, which is a whole other can of worms that I have yet to open up yet, which I know it definitely does boost the way that your posts are seen on the algorithm. And I know that people with Twitter Blue are able to show their Twitch streams on the platform now, which is great. One thing I have gotten a lot of traction for is kind of hosting raffles, hosting a lot of raffles or any type of just interaction with your community. People like free stuff. That's just bottom of the line. People like it. People want to interact with it. And usually on days where I see a lot more attention coming to my account than normal, those are the days that I say to myself, I'm going to stream on this day. Because I know for a fact, people are going to come back to my account. They're going to see that I'm live and then they're going to want to visit. That's usually what brings in the bigger numbers for me.
So going live in the VTuber community is a really powerful strategy. What are some other strategies? And you talked about Twitter a little bit, but like the click-through rates, the retention rates, all these kind of stats that you see, what have you seen really works well to help with your click-through rates, to help with your retention rates as a VTuber?
So what works well, I would definitely focus on more of the visual aspect. Whenever it comes to promoting a stream, we also heavily focus on having weekly schedules. I know that is kind of our assignment for this week as well. I made it a habit to post a weekly schedule every week, but I think this one is a monthly schedule, which is a bit new to me, but I'm very excited to try it. And I think it'll definitely give me more time to flesh out what I want to stream in that month. And so schedules, it's what helps people track what times you are going to be live. It's not just a personal schedule. This is a schedule that you pin to the top of your blog. People can see it. People know when you're live. But whenever it comes to interaction posts, usually I would make a graphic. It is usually a really quick graphic, either in PixArt or I've started using Adobe Express more often. When it comes to creating just like any types of graphics, I suggest including like any type of art that you've gotten for yourself, the stream time, what exactly you're doing, what you need to do. Anything visually appealing will catch people's eye when it comes to the algorithm. That is what is more like what is going to bring people to your account more. There have been like the rare occasions where I have been ranting online and somehow I just kind of post a relatable take that blows up every once in a blue moon. Those are great days. And I will definitely stream on that day. It is, yes, it works, but it's also, you have to get rid of it for that to happen. One thing I've also noticed I've seen how people blow up is also on TikTok. I've seen a lot more VTubers blow up on TikTok rather than YouTube, in my opinion. Definitely takes a lot of effort to blow up on YouTube. And well, basically for any platform, you have to stay consistent with it. When it comes to TikToks, you are able to create short compilations showcasing what you have to bring to the table when it comes to a content creator. And if you have something funny, or if you have something really cool to show to people, that is something that you can fit into like a 15-second video. The more that you post, the more that TikTok is going to be inclined to share your work on people's For You pages. So focusing on very visually appealing aspects when it comes to basically any platform that you want to market yourself as a VTuber on, that is what I definitely would say to focus on.
And when you're scripting, are you focusing on the classic hook, content, close, or hook, curiosity gap, tease? What's your strategy as you put together the content for your VTuber channel?
I definitely like to use the hook, the one like attention grabber, like drop your PNGs, drop your art, show me your references. Like I'm doing a tier list or hosting this specific stream on this specific day, and then kind of getting like a catching question, like kind of a rhetorical question, like, will you join me? Come and see what I've got to be doing. And even if you don't have any art to go with your post, GIFs or GIFs, I love using. It. Actually, it still works just as well. And also, I would not recommend posting any links on the post, on the promotional post that you are creating, especially for any post that you are showing that you were live. leave your Twitch links or any links where you are streaming in the comments, because if you post a link on there, that's immediately cutting you off from the algorithm. You're not going to get any engagement. But yeah, I like the hook, usually keeping it in all caps with colorful emojis, and then leaving tags at the bottom. Sometimes a quote in between, making it just look very flashy, very attention-grabbing. You don't want anything too cluttered. You want something to be easy to read, concise, and eye-catching, and something that people can participate in. That is definitely what I'm looking for.
Those are rules that can apply to other platforms too.
Absolutely.
And you've mentioned Twitch quite a few times here. Are there things special to Twitch that are different for YouTube and vice versa?
I've actually considered making the switch over to YouTube. I started off on Twitch, considering it is a lot easier to get viewer retention when it comes to live streams on Twitch, I have noticed. However, you can get a lot more revenue on YouTube, especially when creating videos on there. It is strongly encouraged on YouTube to be creating shorts, long quality videos, and also live streams, especially as a VTuber. When it comes to Twitch, all you have to worry about is just pushing the live button and making sure that your stream looks pretty visually appealing. For Twitch, like Twitter, it's kind of a love-hate relationship. Twitch has, and a lot of corporate VTubers definitely lean more towards YouTube when it comes to live streaming and posting content and interacting with your fans. However, most independent VTubers use Twitch. However, we have been seeing kind of a surge in bans with no particular offense. Twitch really likes to strike down on us for really no apparent reason, or very stupid reasons at that. Usually, the people get their platforms back, but it definitely is very frustrating, especially for streamers with full-time jobs, because that is basically their livelihood that Twitch just cut off. And you have to be really careful about that on there. Like staying family-friendly, or making sure that you have DMCA-free music. That is also very much a thing. I have to constantly be looking for copyright-free music, even though I would absolutely love to put on my Spotify playlist and just sing along. But yeah, I wouldn't say prefer either of them over the other. I have been wanting to dabble in YouTube a lot more when it comes to that fact, especially considering how finicky the Twitch platform can be. However, I will never discourage anybody from using Twitch or YouTube.
I think that point really reinforces the importance of being on more than one platform, and also of collecting and curating your own community in other ways. Because even if you have a Discord server, right? Even if you have a platform on YouTube or Twitter or any other social media, in addition to your Twitch profiles, it can go away in the blink of an eye. So making sure that you're collecting email addresses when possible, creating community in other places when possible, and really nourishing that sense of engagement. As you've been talking about,
when it comes to creating reach on other platforms, I always encourage other content creators to have different platforms on other social medias. Particularly, say, when it comes to VTubing, like Facebook is more for familial purposes, at least on my end, and LinkedIn, that is mainly for my corporate job. A lot of VTuber agencies looking for talent, they wouldn't particularly look on your LinkedIn. They are specifically searching for your video content. And when it comes to your video content, I highly suggest, when it comes to shorter things, sticking to YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikToks. Those are the short ones that you want to stick to. When it comes to long, high-quality videos or even podcasts, I would stick to YouTube or even Spotify, because Spotify, I think, also has a video option now. And keeping with status updates, like Twitter's not going to be around forever. When I was in middle school, I used to use Instagram a lot, and I found that the most engagement that I got was kind of putting a spotlight on other artists. I definitely really like sharing other artists' work on my Instagram, and somehow I managed to blow up from that. And I never forget to credit my artists. I will always say this, especially as a VTuber, credit your artists, okay? because those are the people that their livelihoods are going into creating your VTuber model, your assets. Credit your artists, especially for your peers, to find a good quality work like them. I would say when it comes to storing and also kind of experiment just on any platform, who knows? Like, you might be small on Twitter and then you'll end up blowing up on Instagram, or you'll end up blowing up on YouTube. And it is very imperative to have those multiple platforms, because you'll never know when something just goes down, you know? And next thing you know, like, the community is going to have to migrate. I remember when Google Plus was still a thing, that was a whole can of worms. I think I was 13, just up role playing, and that I didn't even know a lick about engagements or algorithms. That didn't even cross my mind. But next thing I knew, it was taken down, and I was like, where am I supposed to go? So I migrated to Instagram. I didn't really like Instagram, and then I moved over to Discord, and Discord, I found kind of a place there, but it wasn't really social media. It was more just kind of like a chat room. And then eventually I found myself on Twitter, and now we're here when it comes to the VTuber community. Account as well. I haven't been too active on there.
What are the numbers for each platform? I want to make sure that they understand, because each of these platforms equal total reach. So what's your most used platform, and what's the number there all the way down to the least, and what is that number?
My most used platform is Twitter. I have 4,000 followers on there. When it comes to my next used platform, I would say Twitch. I'm reaching 1,000 on there.
And those followers are more engaged, maybe because it's Twitch?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That engagement level makes a difference, because 4,000 followers on, Twitter or X, right, can translate to a certain percentage of reach, whereas 1,000 followers on Twitch can transfer to a larger percentage of reach, correct?
Absolutely, yes. My least used social media platform, oh goodness. When it comes to the VTuber community, I would say that would have to be Instagram. I've still been like experimenting on how to get good engagement, and I also need to just sit my butt down and come up with a list of hashtags that I need to use, because I found it so convenient just only having to use 3 hashtags. But I've seen artists just put 1 million hashtags on Instagram, and somehow that works.
Oh, and YouTube.
And
is YouTube right behind Twitch, or?
YouTube, I would say it's honestly below Instagram. I need to use YouTube more often.
So it goes X, Twitch, Instagram, and then YouTube. Is that correct?
Yes,
okay.
Pretty much.
For your professional voiceover community building activities.
Yeah, definitely, I would say. When it comes to YouTube, I have a couple of Reels posts on there because of just making TikToks. I've just managed to have them. I was like, you know what? I'm going to put these on here. Somehow I'm going to get some engagement. I believe I have 100 subscribers on YouTube, and I have 500 followers on Instagram.
Excellent. And in those community building activities where you're streaming to all platforms at once using something like Restream, or how are you streaming in those lives? What are you using for your live experience? Is it all Twitch?
Currently, it is all Twitch. However, I am intending to reach out those branches. I have also found there is kind of like a solid VTuber community on TikTok when it comes to TikTok live streams. And you can also stream on both Twitch and TikTok at the same time. I've been meaning to experiment with that when it comes to Restream. That definitely does seem very ideal for me. However, I have been confused on the amount. I know there is like kind of like a certain threshold you have to meet to stream on TikTok as well, and I don't think I have met that threshold yet. So I've just kind of like stuck to posting those short videos on there. So right now it has just mainly been Twitch, and eventually I do maybe intend to get Twitter Blue so I can get more engagement through there. I have clicked on a couple of my mutual streams through Twitter.
It seems like your strategy in all these platforms is built around making sure that you're nourishing your VTuber community and serving that community. You talked before about the artist and supporting the artist. I'm curious, what has been the impact of AI on the VTuber community?
Oh gosh, we abhor AI in the VTuber community. It is basically like a name that shall not be named, mainly because people have been using AI for very unethical purposes. That is, I generated art. I have found this class to be very effective in seeing the ethical considerations when it comes to AI and when it comes to finding inspiration for content. But however, when it comes to AI art, that is something that I cannot support personally because it is directly taking from other artists to create this algorithm and output, which is most of the time they're not consenting to have their art used for these generations. And I have also heard that it definitely does play into a lot of environmental factors as well, AI art generation, and it is strongly discouraged in the VTuber community. And like kind of just like any mention of the name AI in the community, you can kind of get a bit crucified for that on there.
The fear, it sounds like, is translating into this real kind of keep it at arm's length, right? How are people responding to AI beyond fear? Are any people using it maybe constructively to help them get feedback on their scripts or things like that?
I would assume so. I wouldn't be surprised if people did it. Today, I kind of use ChatGPT. I was like, hey, I need some kind of goal incentives for this donathon. I need ideas because I'm basically drawing a blank and I don't have that much time to go through other people's donathons and grab inspiration from there. And I actually got some pretty good ideas from there. And so when it comes to using AI, I highly discourage using it in any type of art form, but use it to analyze data through algorithms of social media and also focusing on inspiration and what kind of audience you want to have. As we kind of talked in the beginning of this class, we spoke about like AI is basically in every space. It's even your spell check. Trying to compose an email for your boss and trying to make sure that you sound correct or you sound eloquent. I think people are very, very just scared of using it because not only of the ethical considerations, well, mainly it is the ethical considerations, but I also think they just don't really know how to use it ethically and as a content creator.
Sam, you've been so generous to share your perspectives and experiences with voiceover work, with VTubing, with your experience with these social media platforms and the streaming platforms. What advice do you have for people who are taking AI and personal branding specifically?
I definitely say come into it with an open mind. I remember when I came into this class at first, I was like, either I'm going to love it or I'm going to hate it because I saw the name AI and I was like, ooh, like, oof, we're probably going to get into some like really questionable stuff here. But no, I definitely feel like I have learned a lot on how to use AI as a tool to help create your audience and your personal brand. And get ready with what you have in mind first about your personal brand. This class is meant to flesh it out and actually get those gears turning when it comes to creating your brand and what is going to stick with your audience and find out what works for you.
And earlier you were talking about how you were able to share some of the things in your coursework with other VTubers. What are some of the things that stuck out in your mind as worth sharing?
So I would say I have definitely encouraged people to use AI when it comes to checking for relevancy in their posts and also making sure you come off in a clear manner or searching for content inspiration ideas as well. What else? And also talking about what kind of audiences there are online, especially when it comes to Twitter and when it comes to other platforms and what you kind of should be tailoring your content towards. And one thing I have translated from what I have learned as a VTuber to this class, but also creating an output of it, is once you have your own unique brand that is unique to you, run with it. Because that is you. That is something that your audience members are going to see. And that is how you present yourself. And you got to really stay consistent with it. Of course, we're going to grow over time, but there's just a lot that goes into it. It's a lot about experimentation, and it's not something that you could just blow up overnight, like we said at the very beginning. And there's going to be some trials and tribulations, and you're going to find out what works for you, what doesn't, and what new things that you got to try. And I definitely feel like this class, not only it provides a solid groundwork of where you can start, but also just what to keep in mind in the future, even after you leave this class and you take other classes, or even after you graduate. You eventually are just going to start applying these new skills that you've learned as time goes on, and the more that you develop your platform.
Somebody is listening who wants to become a VTuber. They're thinking, I want to be a VTuber, but I don't really know if I'm sure. What would you say to convince them to get off the sidelines and start VTubing?
Just hit the go live button. You don't even need any special kind of software. You don't even need a special mic. As long as you have a microphone that could pick up your audio, and as long as you have like a mascot of some kind, that is all you need. And don't stop talking.
And the app that they need to use, I know, for example, they have Character Animate with Adobe. What's the app that you recommend that someone starting to VTube uses?
VGen.
VGen. V and then GEN. Is that correct?
Yep.
Excellent. Sam, please tell us how we can find you. Our listening audience wants to look you up and see your channels and all your places. And please spell out those handles for us.
Okay, perfect. You can find me and my content on either Twitter, Twitch. I have basically the same name everywhere. It is Eikon Sapphire. It's just that, and you'll find me anywhere.
Okay. Sam Sena on LinkedIn.
Yes. And also my voiceover Twitter, it is Sena_voiceovers.
Awesome. Sam, thank you again for taking the time to share your wisdom and advice about both voiceover acting and becoming a VTuber. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. I really appreciate it.